I swear I can make you hear, the barefoot girl whispered, her voice trembling like the fountain's ripples behind her. In the courtyard of Grant Industries, marble gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the air smelled of money and arrogance. Lucas Grant, the tech mogul who owned the empire, strode past the fountain with his phone glued to his ear, barely noticing his 10-year-old son, Oliver, sitting silently on the bench. Deaf since he was 2, Oliver had lived in a world where even his father's voice was nothing but a shadow. That was when she appeared, Leia, thin and barefoot, her clothes threadbare, clutching a tray of wilted flowers and carved trinkets. Security usually chased her away, but fate didn't. Their eyes met, his lonely and wordless, hers wild and knowing. She raised a trembling hand and signed, "Hello." For the first time in years, Oliver's face changed. Someone spoke his language. Moments later, he winced, rubbing his ear. "Itches," he signed. Leia knelt, eyes narrowing. "Hold still," she whispered. Before fear could stop him, her finger slid carefully into his ear and pulled out something black, alive, writhing. Oliver gasped and then sound. The blare of a car horn tore through the air, raw and real. His hands flew to his ears as he shouted his own voice, shocking him. Leia froze, tears in her eyes. "You heard that?" For the first time in 8 years, the silent world cracked open, and inside, a courtyard built on power and pride. A barefoot stranger had just done what no fortune could ever buy. She gave a boy back his sound. Lucas Grant could barely breathe. As his son's voice echoed through the marble courtyard, "Dad!" Oliver gasped, the word trembling, broken but real. For a moment, time itself froze. The fountain stilled mid-arc. The murmuring employees stopped to stare, and Lucas's world built on logic and control cracked open in disbelief. Then rage flooded in. He lunged forward, snatching Oliver's arm and yanking him back. "Get away from him," he barked at Leia. "Security!" His voice ricocheted through the air, sharp and merciless. But before the guards could arrive, Oliver spoke again. Hoarse but loud. "Don't hurt her," Lucas froze. The sound his son's voice hit him harder than any blow could. For 10 years, he'd prayed for that moment. He'd spent millions chasing silence, hiring experts, building machines. And yet, a barefoot girl from the street had undone it in seconds. At the hospital, chaos followed. White coats, blinking monitors, sterile light. Lucas stood behind the glass, watching as doctors swarmed around Oliver. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from something darker, guilt. The lead specialist entered, clipboard in hand, voice polished with corporate calm. "Remarkable case, Mr. Grant. The obstruction appears to have been removed. Temporary recovery is possible." "Temporary," Lucas snapped. "A girl off the street did what you couldn't in 8 years, and you're calling it temporary." The doctor adjusted his glasses, avoiding Lucas's gaze. "We followed all protocols. Lucas's voice cracked. "You took my money, promised miracles, and you never even looked inside his ear." Beside him, Leia stepped forward, her tone cutting through the sterile air. "They didn't look because they didn't care. They saw your name, your money, not your son." Lucas turned toward her, anger flickering, but behind it something else, truth. He felt it sinking in like a knife. The chief doctor sighed and slid a folder across the table. "You should see this." Inside were pages of medical notes, stamped and signed reports declaring Oliver's condition irreversible. But the last line stopped Lucas cold. "Maintain diagnosis to preserve long-term funding. Grant account approved." He stared at the words, the ink blurring through his tears. They kept him sick. They turned his son into an income stream. Lucas's fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. "You monsters," he whispered, voice breaking. "You sold my son's silence." He tore the papers apart, the sound of ripping echoing like thunder in the sterile room. Leia stood silently, eyes burning with fierce compassion. Now, for the first time in his life, Lucas Grant, billionaire innovator, man of reason, was learning what true deafness felt like. The kind that comes not from the ears, but from the heart that forgot how to listen. The hospital corridor was too bright, too clean for what Lucas Grant felt inside. The truth throbbed in his chest like a siren that wouldn't stop. They had bought his son's silence. Not nature, not fate people. People who smiled in polished offices, who sent invoices with words like care, plan, and treatment package. And he'd signed them all. He sat beside Oliver's hospital bed, hands clasped, staring at the small boy who now lay awake, tracing the pulse on his father's wrist, like he could feel sound through touch. "You're safe," Lucas whispered, though his voice shook. "I promise I'll fix this." Oliver turned his head, eyes wide and searching. His lips moved slowly, uncertainly. Not your fault, he said, his voice, the syllables wobbling like a newborn fawn's first steps. Lucas's throat closed. For years he'd convinced himself that throwing money at experts was love, that presence could be replaced by progress. But now, in the quiet hum of the hospital room, he saw the cost of his blindness, not just the silence of his son, but the silence inside himself. Behind him, Leia stood near the door, her hands still stained faintly with dried blood from what she had pulled from Oliver's ear. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Her very stillness was a mirror, and Lucas saw himself in it. Not the powerful CEO, but a father who had stopped seeing his own child. He turned toward her. "You, how did you even know what made you look?" Leia met his eyes. "Because I actually saw him," she said softly. "Everyone else looked at the money. I looked at the boy." Her words landed like truth disguised as mercy. Lucas exhaled, defeated. "You're just a kid. How do you talk like you've lived 100 years? She shrugged, gaze steady. "Because on the streets, you hear everything no one else listens to." The room went quiet, except for the soft rhythm of Oliver's breathing. For the first time, Lucas realized silence didn't have to mean emptiness. It could mean listening. He turned to his son, brushing a hand through the boy's hair. "I've been deaf too," he murmured. Later that night, when the city lights blinked through the hospital window, Lucas made a promise not to his company, not to his legacy, but to the small boy sleeping beside him. He would tear down every system that profited from pain. He would stop paying for hope and start fighting for truth. Because for the first time, Lucas Grant truly heard not through his ears, but through the voice of a barefoot girl who had shown him that money could build empires, but only love could break silence. By morning, the rain had stopped, but the world outside the hospital felt heavier than ever. Lucas Grant walked beside Leia and Oliver through the sliding glass doors, the cold air biting his skin like guilt made visible. Oliver clung to his father's sleeve, his small hand trembling each time an ambulance siren echoed in the distance. Sound new, raw, terrifying, filled his world now, and every noise felt like thunder. Inside the car, silence took over again. Lucas stared at his reflection in the tinted window, a man who had everything yet had failed at the one thing that mattered most. Across from him, Leia sat quietly, her hands still marked from the night before. He wanted to thank her, to say something that carried the weight of what she'd done, but words were small compared to the miracle she had given him. When they returned home, Oliver wouldn't leave Leia's side. He followed her into the kitchen, into the garden, even sat near her when she was too exhausted to speak. She didn't treat him like a patient or a miracle, just a boy who was finally alive again. Lucas watched them from the hallway, feeling both admiration and shame twist inside him. Later that evening, as the house dimmed into soft amber light, Lucas found Leia standing by the window, gazing at the skyline. "Why did you help him?" he asked quietly. "You didn't even know us." Leia's voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered. "Because no one helped my brother," she said. "He went deaf from an infection. The clinic turned us away because we couldn't pay. I know what it feels like when the world decides your pain isn't profitable." The words hit harder than any accusation. Lucas swallowed hard. "Then help me make this right," he said. "Not with money. With truth." She turned toward him, her face softening. "Start by listening to him," she whispered. That night, Lucas knelt beside his son's bed, where Oliver lay wide awake, tracing shapes in the air. "What do you hear?" he asked gently. Oliver smiled faintly, voice trembling but sure. "Everything." Lucas's chest tightened. He leaned down and pulled his son close. "Then you'll never have to hear silence again. Not while I'm still breathing." Outside, the wind stirred through the city, and Leia stepped into the night, her silhouette fading into the dark like a prayer carried by the air. Lucas watched her go, realizing that the girl who had nothing had given him the only thing that mattered, a reason to finally listen, to fight, and to live like a man who could hear. Days later, the story had already spread. Headlines called it the miracle at Grant Industries. But for Lucas, there was nothing miraculous about it, only revelation. He stood outside the hospital one last time, the same place where he had once signed checks instead of asking questions. Now he was signing something else, a legal order, demanding a full investigation into the medical network that had profited from his son's pain. The men in suits tried to reason with him to soften their lies with apologies, but Lucas's voice was no longer the voice of a billionaire. It was the voice of a father. "You silenced my boy for profit," he said quietly. "Now I'll make sure the world hears the truth." Oliver sat nearby, drawing on a notepad, his laughter echoing softly, awkward, uneven, but full of life. Every sound he made felt like a small rebellion against the years of silence. And somewhere in the distance, Leia watched her bare feet leaving prints on the wet pavement as she prepared to disappear back into the world that had forgotten her. Lucas turned his voice low but certain. "You gave me back my son," he said. "How do I thank you?" Leia smiled faintly. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Grant. Just promise me you'll keep listening to him and to the people no one else hears." Then she turned and walked away, her shadow stretching across the morning light. As the sun rose, Lucas finally understood wealth could build towers, but compassion built bridges. He had spent his life chasing power, only to learn that the most powerful thing he could ever do was listen. Sometimes we think hearing means using our ears, but real listening begins with the heart. When we choose to see beyond money, titles, and pride, we rediscover our humanity. A single act of empathy can awaken truth, heal wounds, and even give someone back their voice. What would you have done if you were Lucas? Would you forgive or would you fight? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else. If you like this story, kindly thumbs up, and thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.